First of all, hello and welcome to my virtual stage here. As you saw, today I want to talk about music and I want to talk about agility. To me, I've been an Agile coach, as Klaus already said, and I've been a musician. And to me, these worlds fuse rather well because I believe that in teams and in businesses, we can learn a lot from musicians when it comes to agility. Because musicians can be surprisingly agile in many terms, even without knowing what a Scrum Master is, what SAFe is, or how to use a backlog. So I talk a lot about how can we apply that? How can we learn from musicians for our agility? Musicians seem to have fun in stressful situations. They are on stages in front of thousands of people, like direct customer feedback. And there's no way back. You cannot hide. You have to perform at that very moment. And they not only deliver, but musicians also, if you notice it, always do that with a smile on their face. Like it looks as if they are relaxed and even having fun while under that stressful situation. And I want business teams to have the same experience while they do their work. Just have fun, be relaxed, deliver high performance. And the aspect I picked for today that I want to talk about and focus on is the aspect of failure culture. Because when it comes to dealing with mistakes, it's pretty interesting how musicians do that. And it's actually very agile without even knowing the buzzwords. Before we start with that, let me play you a few more notes. So that's a little jazzy thing here. Oh, and what was that? Right, that was a mistake. That note there, that was wrong. I played a wrong note. And before I show you how I can deal with that mistake, I want to tell you a story about a junior piano player that made a big mistake and how everything went. And why I do that, why I talk about failure culture so much, is because to me that's a important pillar of agility. It's if you don't make mistakes or if you try to avoid mistakes, then you're not going to be agile. You're not going to be innovative. You're going to lose out in today's world. Okay? If you try to avoid mistakes, if you don't make any mistakes, then you can be mediocre at best. Shying away from risk, you will not be innovative, you will not be creative, and you will not be successful in business. And here's the lesson that we can learn and the little story from that piano player that made the big mistake. So this picture here shows a jazz band. It's the jazz band of a famous trumpet player called Miles Davis. Maybe some of you know him. So Miles Davis is a very successful, great artist, commercially successful, and he has this band that he plays with. It's like a cross-disciplinary team, right? You have the trumpet player, you have the bass, you have the saxophone, the drums, and you have the piano player on the grand piano. And that piano player is the junior in the team. His name is Herbie. Herbie is the junior, and Miles is obviously the senior or the lead, the boss here. And the true story that Herbie likes to tell is that of a night when they had a concert. It wasn't the night where this photo was taken. It was a different concert. And it was a good mood. Like the audience was in a good mood. The band was in a good mood. They were playing on stage the first few songs and everything was going well. Like it was a nice concert, a nice product experience they delivered to their customers. And then Miles Davis started playing one of his amazing solos. The senior played one of his amazing solos. And the job of the junior piano player, was to accompany him, to play chords so that Miles could play his solo. And that's what he did. Herbie played chords, and suddenly he played a chord that was so wrong that he was scared that he ruined the whole evening. Like it was a big mistake. A big mistake he made. And he was so scared that he couldn't play for a minute. He took his fingers off the keys like they were hot. And now, the magic is how Miles Davis reacted to that mistake. And this is what I want teams and companies to learn. But before I tell you what Miles actually did, let's think about how leaders in teams could react to people making mistakes, to a junior messing up big time. The first reaction could obviously be that Miles stops playing, points at the piano player and says, he messed up. That guy made the mistake. I played the right notes. I'm perfect. I did my job. He messed up. Like playing the blame game, right? And that's hopefully not what a lot of companies do still today. Some still do. And then Miles would have gone to the piano player after the concert backstage and told him, if you mess up one more time like this, you're out of here. You can find yourself another job. I hope you don't experience that in your company or in your teams. What do you think, under such a treatment, how the piano player would have reacted on the next gig, on the next concert? He would have likely played very conservatively, like trying to avoid mistakes. He would have practiced and tried to avoid mistakes. And to avoid mistakes, we have to play very conservatively, only the safe notes. Like there would have not been any of the nice jazz and the innovation that people really crave when they go to a concert. So he would have been mediocre at best, not innovative and probably not interesting, and also not very successful in the long term. So we can probably all agree this would have been a bad way to deal with a mistake. That's, of course, not what Miles Davis did. The second way, or another way how we could deal with a mistake, with failure, would have been that Miles Davis, when he heard the mistake, would just pause for a second, resettle, and then play on as if nothing happened. Just gloss over it, hope the audience didn't notice. And sometimes actually the audience doesn't notice. And then even if they notice, they quickly forget afterwards. And then this is what we call tolerating failure, failure tolerance. He would have gone to the junior in the team after the concert and talked to him and said, you made a mistake, but that's not a big deal. He would have applauded him for making mistakes. He would have said to him, keep making mistakes. It's a good thing. You need that for innovation. Please don't be afraid of making mistakes. Maybe practice a little more, but it's okay to make mistakes. Now, that's not what Miles Davis did, but it's still much better than playing the blame game, right? It would have at least encouraged the junior to take risks, to be courageous, and to be innovative. And this is what I see in many companies that I coach, many agile companies or companies moving towards agility. I also see that behavior in traditional companies that are not agile, with good leaders. The important part here is to not only talk about that you accept failure, but to also own that in what you do once someone messes up big time. If you tell your team that they are free to make mistakes and they should be courageous, but once they mess up, you try to blame someone, this is probably the last time they would have been courageous and innovative. So failure tolerance, while better still than the blame game, is also not what Miles Davis did. And here's what Miles Davis actually did, how he reacted to that mistake. And to me, that's the pinnacle of failure culture. This is how we should all learn to cope with mistakes. When that junior piano player played that wrong chord, that big mistake, Miles paused for a second in his playing, and then he played a few notes that made the wrong chord right. He played a few notes that made the wrong chord right. And Herbie, the junior, it took him a long time to understand what just happened. How could someone react on the spot in such a vulnerable or stressful situation in front of an audience, with his business on the line, with the audience, the customers sitting right there, and of such a wrong chord, at that very second, delivers such creativity and high performance to react to that and correct the mistake by playing the right notes. This is an insane feat. And this is what we can learn from musicians, how they do that. I mean, obviously there are a lot of aspects. I don't have time to go into detail. Maybe later in the sessions or in the Q&A we can talk about that. But it has to do with psychological safety, with trust, with technical excellence, all the stuff we know, right? If you know your band will catch you, if you trust yourself, your skills, if you practice regularly, of course it's easier to react to that. Still, it's amazing how to a unexpected wrong event you can react in seconds and turn it around like this. And the secret that Herbie found out later, how Miles actually managed to do that, is the following. The difference between Herbie and Miles, between the junior and the senior, was that Herbie categorized what he was playing. He was playing a right chord and a right chord and a right chord and a wrong chord. He judged. He categorized into right and wrong chords, which made him react differently when there was a wrong chord. Miles, on the other hand, didn't judge. He didn't categorize into right and wrong. He didn't hear right and wrong chords. Miles Davis just heard neutral musical events. Like there was a chord and a chord and a chord and a chord. And it was his job as the solo player, as the improviser. It was his job to react to these events, no matter what they are. So he reacted to the chord he heard. And maybe it was even tickling his musical brain a little, because it was such an interesting chord and it was a springboard for innovation, for new creativity. That shot him off in a different direction than he would have gone otherwise. So he might have welcomed that chord even. And that is even better than tolerating failure. To me, it's the pinnacle of failure culture, of how to deal with mistakes. And to put it in the words of Miles Davis, it's not the note you play that's the wrong note. It's the note you play afterwards that makes it right or wrong. And that's a lesson that can not only be applied to music, but it can also be applied to business, and I would say it can be applied to life in general. Let me show you how I could fix that mistake by refusing to see it as a mistake. So I played that wrong note, right? And what made that note wrong was not the note. It's not the note that is wrong. It was what I did afterwards that made it wrong. I reacted as if it was a mistake. I stopped playing. Now I'm going to react differently now to that note. Now it doesn't sound like a mistake anymore. It's even creative. It's a springboard for me to find a new melodic line. I'm even thankful for that. And that's a secret that musicians know. Oh, let me stay at the keyboard. If I refuse to see that as a mistake, and I think it's, whoa, this is an interesting sound, then I can deal with it in a different way. I'm not getting into that narrow rut of how to deal with failure, like covering it up or trying to fix it. I have a more open mind. It's the openness of my mind that I can now see this as a starting point for innovation. I can say, wow, this is an interesting event. Let's play with it. And what helps musicians a lot is the trick that right next to every wrong note, like if you play a note that sounds wrong to you, the key right next to it is always a right note. So I just have to move one key to the side and I play a right note. That's very reassuring for a musician. This is why we can play just like that without being afraid of making mistakes. So again, it's not the note that you play that is wrong. It's the note you play afterwards, how you react to it, that makes it wrong or right. And when I tell that story to business audience or to teams, I sometimes do that at the beginning of an Agile transformation. Then sometimes some people tell me, yeah, that's nice for music. That might work in music and in art, but that doesn't apply to the hard world of business. We cannot do that. We cannot just say, oh, this mistake is interesting. We have to use it as innovation. And whenever I hear that, I made it a habit to have like a few dozen stories I can tell about businesses that came into the world through mistakes and through people avoiding to judge and to view mistakes as a mistake. And here I listed a few of them. So you might know a few of them. Like there's the penicillin, there's the digital camera, there's the sticky note, there is X-rays, there's microwaves, there's super glue, there's Viagra, there is champagne. There are so many things that come from mistakes. Not all innovation comes from mistakes, but astoundingly many come from mistakes, and not only from the mistakes themselves, but from people refusing to act as if it was a mistake. And to illustrate that, let me briefly recite the story of penicillin. That was Alexander Fleming tried to find a treatment for a bacteria that was actually killing people. People were losing limbs and were killed by that. And he tried to find a medication that could stop the bacteria from growing. And they did that in the lab with these Petri dish and tried to put medication to it, and nothing worked. And after some time, you need a vacation. So he went on a summer vacation and left the lab. And when he came back after a week of vacation and opened his lab, opened the door, and then he saw the mess. Someone forgot to clean up the lab. Mistake, big mistake, right? So there was, over the Petri dish that he had there for the medication where the bacteria were, there was growing mold over it. So it was disgusting. And yeah, again, he would have had 3 ways to react to that, just like Miles Davis did. The first way would to be playing the blame game. Like, who's the lab assistant responsible for that mess? Clean it up, and if you ever do that again, you're fired. Of course, that's not how we want to deal with that. In that case, we wouldn't have penicillin today. That wonderful medication. The second way how we could have dealt with it would be failure tolerance. And that would have been to say, yeah, I don't know who forgot to clean up the lab. Maybe it was me even. I'm just gonna say it's okay. I'm gonna clean the Petri dish and then start the experiment anew. In that case, again, we wouldn't have penicillin today. What Alexander Fleming did, and some of you might know the story, is he refused to judge. He refused to see that as a mistake. He looked at the mold growing over the Petri dish and said, interesting. Let's look at it closer. And then he put the mold under the microscope, and he discovered that it stopped the bacteria growth. So it was the medication that actually helped. It was penicillin, what we have today. And this is again because it was not the note that's the wrong note. It was the note he played afterwards that made it wrong or right. And just another little story is about champagne, just to close it. Don't want to bore you too much with that. Champagne actually was supposed to be white wine. But when they put it in the cellar, it spontaneously fermented a second time and these bubbles formed, which was nasty. You don't want bubbles in your wine, right? So there was a monk tasked with fixing the problem. Get these bubbles out of the wine. And what that monk actually did was he tried that. He tasted the wine and he said, whoa, interesting. That's actually an interesting taste. And then, of course, champagne was born. We sell it at a premium ever since. And in music, I could do the same. I could just leave the bubbles there, like as if it was intended in the wine. If I'm courageous enough to just leave that note, don't move it, just accept it as an interesting sound, it even becomes very jazzy and interesting and innovative. So that's the thing here I want to give to you as a thought about failure culture. Try not to judge. Try to see mistakes as a springboard for innovation. And to close this with the words of Miles Davis, if you're not making mistakes, it's a mistake. Thank you.